Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Moonflower Dance by Lea Doué, narrated by Zehra Naqvi. Chapter 1. You're the only dragon girl I want. I'll see you soon. Safe travels. Neylan clutched the last letter she'd received from Keir, Master Healer of Mazarian, just before she'd left home to join her sister Melantha in the kingdom far to the northeast. She stood in front of a massive wardrobe, absently running one hand over the fine fabrics of a half-dozen exquisite red dresses. For months, she'd been looking forward to visiting a new court in a faraway kingdom, where no one knew the nickname that was whispered mockingly behind her back, Dragon Girl. An oddity among oddities, one of the 12 princesses of Ituria, she finally had a chance for a fresh start. Keir alone called her Dragon Girl now, and for good reason. Her stomach fluttered as if tickled by invisible feathers. She would be meeting him for the first time in a few shorter hours. Aren't they something? Melantha, older by 1 year, sat cross-legged on the bed, wolfing down a light lunch of toast and eggs. She spit crumbs onto her dress as she spoke. Neylan grinned, accustomed to Mel's bad habits. They're beautiful. I'm glad you told me to pack light. Although packing more books in place of clothes might not strictly fit that definition. Which one should I wear first? Mel swallowed. Start from the left and go down the line. Sound plan. Any of them would be perfect for her first meeting with Keir. She pulled out a dress and laid it on the bed to admire. Someone knocked at the door, and then Neylan's lady-in-waiting and childhood friend entered in her wheeled chair. Will you be needing anything else before the party? Una asked. My sister can help me, Una. Thank you. Una nodded. Before she left, she used a hooked stick to pick up Neylan's travel-worn cloak where it had fallen from the back of a chair. Neylan and Mara, Mel's twin, had arrived at the palace the night before, with just enough time to fall into bed before the sun rose. Melantha had come bouncing in all too soon to wake her so they could get ready for the garden party in honour of their arrival. You think the day dresses are nice? Wait until you see the ball gowns. Mel slid off the bed and placed her plate on the desk. There's a spare gown in the wardrobe, though, in case he doesn't get the first one done in time. Belonged to the king's late mother, I think. He's finishing your gown for my wedding first. The dressmaker is, not the king. Neylan smiled. Mel clearly hadn't come to her rooms to discuss fashion. Out with it. What's got you pacing a hole in the floor? Surely you're not nervous about a little garden party. Am I pacing? Mel stopped and looked at her feet, hidden underneath layers of green silk. I guess I am. She wrung her hands and glanced everywhere except at Neylan. A metallic glint on Mel's finger caught Neylan's attention. It wasn't the compass ring she normally wore, which rested as usual on her right hand. This new ring circled the third finger on her left hand. You're nervous about the wedding, aren't you? Mel shrugged. Maybe a little. Neylan slid her letter into the desk drawer and then grasped Mel's hand to inspect the ring. A thin band of copper, expertly crafted to look rustic, held a rough chip of deep green jade. Did Oren design this? Mel grinned, obviously pleased at her fiancé's cleverness. Copper for my hair and jade for my messenger dragon. It's beautiful. Will I get to meet Jade today, and Oren's dragon? Come to think of it, the king's fiancé also had a small messenger dragon, the third from the clutch of eggs Mel had found the previous summer. Normally messengers were reserved for anyone who could afford to keep a handler, mostly royalty, nobility, and wealthy merchants. But Mel and Oren hoped to train them for isolated villages that needed fast and reliable contact with the outside world. I'll fetch her before the party. Oren and I try to socialise them as much as possible, and letting them ride on our shoulders during formal events is good training." She plopped onto the bed beside the dress and fiddled with her rings. "There's something else, isn't there?" Mel's face and neck reddened, and she avoided Neylan's gaze. "I would have told you sooner, but we only just found out, and you were travelling, and—" "Tell me what?" "We have to leave, Oren and I, after the wedding." "Leave?" Neylan sat beside her. Why would they leave just when she'd arrived? Mel was the one who had sent for her in the first place, months before she and Oren had announced their engagement. She stared at Mel's rings, remembering the day the previous summer when Mara had told her their sister had run away. Oren had followed Melantha, of course, and Neylan hadn't been surprised by either event. What had worried her was the news that during her adventure, Mel had become caught up in one of the most tangled curses ever heard of, possibly worse than the one all 12 of the sisters had been trapped in only months before that. Thankfully, Mel had made new friends along the way, including young King Sebastian and his fiancée Vanda, and of particular interest to Neylan, their friend, Master Healer Keir. Keir was the main reason for Neylan's presence in Mazarian. Although Mel had helped break the main curse, and the kingdom was no longer trapped behind an invisible barrier, Keir still transformed into a giant black dragon each night. Even Vanda's grandmother, a former sorceress, hadn't been able to figure out why he hadn't been freed with everyone else. Neylan tucked her trembling hands under her knees. If everything went well, she might be the one to break Keir's curse that very day. Mel spoke again, pulling Neylan's mind back to the topic at hand. "We don't want to leave, but Oren's stepfather insists on meeting me. We got a note 3 days ago that Oren is to come home immediately." "But Oren's been gone for almost 2 years. What's a few more weeks?" Mel sighed and flopped onto her back. "You don't ignore a king's summons, you know that." She closed her eyes. "And here I thought we would be able to get away from all these garden parties and noisy dinners." Neylan pushed aside her own disappointment. Poor Mel. She hated court and formal events, and she was obviously nervous about meeting Oren's family. Neylan lay on the bed beside her and squeezed her hand. "You'll be fine, and you have Mara with you, I presume." On the journey to Mazarian, Mara had said that she wasn't letting Mel out of her sight until she was sure her twin wouldn't get into any more trouble. If that were the case, Mara would never leave Mel's side. Mel nodded. "I'm all about the journey, she's all about the destination," went on and on about the waterfall palace. Oren told her it's loud, but she just rolled her eyes and asked how big the kitchens are. Not that Oren's stepfather would allow her time for more than a tour, with several eligible sons still at home. Una knocked and opened the door, Neylan's hummingbird-sized aconite dragon hanging from a lock of her strawberry blonde hair. "Whist has been looking for you." The little dragon flew over and landed on Neylan's knee. His feet tickled her as he tiptoed along her leg and stomach, all the way to her neck. He peeked his dark purple head over her chin and chirped. After Una closed the door, Mel plucked Whist off Neylan's neck. "You'd better get ready. Mara will fume if we make her late to the party." Neylan slipped into the new dress. As soon as she finished tying the laces at the side, goosebumps broke out all over her arms, and her breath caught in her throat. Stars obscured her vision for a split second, until she blinked and shook her head. "Are you all right?" Mel asked as she sat up. Neylan nodded and cleared her throat. She should probably eat something soon. "Just nerves, I think." "I'm sure Keir feels the same way. He's been waiting for ages to meet you." She grinned slyly. "Maybe we can make it a double wedding." Neylan's face heated and she glared. "Don't you dare say that to anyone else. Even if I can break his curse, we'd still take our time before rushing into anything so permanent. She ran a hand along her skirt, which looked and somehow felt like hundreds of deep crimson rose petals overlapping from waist to hem. The bodice proved as velvety soft, and the supple sleeves draped gracefully over her shoulders. Mel had been right. The dressmaker did beautiful work. "Do my hair for me?" Neylan held out a matching ribbon. Mel joined her at the dressing table, biting her lip as she did sometimes to keep her mouth shut, and began twisting Neylan's dark brown waves into a braid while Whist explored the room. Despite her distaste for most aspects of palace life, Mel would be fine. Like a cat, she always seemed to land on her feet. Hopefully she would stay well away from sorcerers and cursers from now on. Not that she'd gotten herself tangled up with them on purpose before. None of Neylan's sisters had, but since their shared run-in with a sorcerer named Therius almost a year ago, 3 of them had once again come face to face with the sorcerer's handiwork. Neylan couldn't let that happen again. She'd answered Mel's first letter with the goal of not only helping Keir, but also of putting a stop to her sisters getting hurt. Vanda's grandmother, or Gram as everyone called her, would be her key to doing that. Mel coiled the braid into a low knot and stuck in the first hairpin. Whist landed on her shoulder to watch. It had always seemed unfair to Neylan that sorcerers had access to knowledge that other people didn't. No one had ever found any written words teaching the feared subject. She had no desire to do the kinds of things Therius had done. He had grown up in darkness, so of course he would use his knowledge in a twisted way. And yet, he had revealed an unexpected beauty in sorcery. Could she not sift through the dregs for hidden gems and use those to keep her family safe? Because she knew better, she would do better. She had spoken with one other sorcerer in her life besides Therius. Her sister Ivy's bodyguard, an ex-sorcerer like Gram, had shared glimpses of what he knew, but her parents had no doubt ordered him to be tight-lipped, as he was a master of changing the subject. Hopefully Gram would be different, if only someone would have the nerve to speak with her and be open to listening and learning. Neylan was ready to do that. She would finally have the knowledge to keep her sisters free from meddling sorcerers once and for all. There! Mel pushed in one last pin. Time to stop daydreaming and get this party over with. Whist hopped over to Neylan's shoulder and inspected the finished result of Mel's labour. With a satisfied chirp, he climbed onto the coiled braid and curled up for a nap. His dark purple hide blended well with her hair, making him difficult to see unless he moved. Oren arrived to escort them to the garden party. Whist chirped a cheerful greeting at Oren's dragon companions, one on each shoulder, but otherwise didn't budge. One of the green messenger dragons leaned forward and reached out a paw as if to pull Whist's tail. "Tantor," Oren warned. The dragon backed off, a disappointed look on his face, and ruffled Oren's blonde hair as if that was what he'd meant to do all along. The lighter green dragon, Jade, stepped daintily onto Mel's shoulder. Oren kissed Mel's cheek and took her hand. He offered Neylan his other arm. "Mara is waiting for us down the hall." Like Neylan, Mara wore red in honor of Vanda being the king's red dragon girl. Many of the other ladies invited to the garden party would be wearing red for the same reason. Or so they thought. One of the few things Neylan knew about cursers. There was always a way out, and sorcerers had to tell you if you asked, although they didn't have to give a straightforward answer. The words to break King Sebastian's curse had seemed simple enough. Free your red dragon girl, and you free yourself. Vanda, now his fiancée, had been identified as his red dragon girl early on for a variety of reasons, including her possession of a red dragon-embroidered scarf. He had succeeded in freeing her by helping her escape the invisible barrier that had been raised over his kingdom. And now, According to Graham, they simply needed to find Keir's red dragon girl to free him from the unexplained complication to the curse that continued turning him into a black dragon each night. After Mel's initial letter detailing Keir's curse and inviting her to Mazarian, Neylan had also corresponded with Vander and King Sebastian, or Baz, as he insisted they call him. In her last letter, Mel had told her about a plan they'd put into place to help Keir find his girl. A series of balls with a number of promising ladies in attendance, as backup in case things didn't work out with Neylan. They need not have worried. Keir's final words had been far more confident than Mel's. "You're the only dragon girl I want." Mara linked arms with Neylan, letting Oren and Mel take the lead as they exited the garden manor, which stood separated from the palace by the extensive gardens. The two-story stone structure had once served as home to a former king's mother-in-law and now housed only Graham and her entourage on the second floor. Baz had promised Vander that he would keep her grandmother safe, and, true to his word, he'd surrounded the former sorceress with staff and servants who were also members of the elite Dragon Guard. No one would disturb Graham's solitude without her permission. Thankfully, Neylan had persuaded Baz to let her room on the ground floor. Uneasy about sharing her interest in discussing sorcery with Graham, even among friends and family, she cited her interest in the gardens. She suspected Keir had convinced his friend to let her stay wherever she would be happiest. The side door led immediately into an avenue of the gardens, shaded by late-blooming pink dogwood trees, hung with bronze lamps that would be lit come evening. Neylan breathed in the floral scents, missing her own corner of the gardens back home. She'd found Whis there over a month ago, huddled among the new growth of sweet basil, his injured wing coated in venom from a rival aconite dragon. Thankfully, aconites were immune to most venom and poisons, and often ingested such substances as part of their regular diet. Oren led them along wandering paths until they reached a cobblestone clearing surrounded by trimmed hedges. Musicians played a jaunty tune from a latticed gazebo, while a score of people milled about, with more seated at tables laden with refreshments. Surrounded by the dark-skinned Mazarians, redheads Mel and Mara stood out like fire among coals. Baz and Vander joined them right away. Vander warmly embraced Neylan and Mara as if they were old friends, not people she had just met the night before. Her messenger dragon clung to her shoulder as if accustomed to such jostling. Vander linked arms with Neylan, the two of them lighting up the clearing in head-to-toe red. "It's so exciting to finally be able to put faces to the people I've only written to for so many months." Having grown up on the run with Graham and her father, trying to find a community willing to accept the presence of the former sorceress, Vander had been unable to read or write when Mel first met her. Mel had insisted Vander pen her own letters, and her writing had slowly improved with each one. "Perhaps you could keep writing to some of my sisters," Neylan said, "so you don't get out of practice." "I'd like that." Baz held out his arm for Mara. "Let's divide and conquer, shall we?" He led her off down a rose-bordered lane to mingle and make introductions with those wandering the gardens. "Meet you back here in half an hour," Mel said, as she and Oren headed down another garden path. Neylan wouldn't put it past them to find a secluded spot and hide until the chosen time. Vander glanced at the remaining two exits, one of which led back to the garden manor, and then guided Neylan between two swan topiaries next to the gazebo. "I guess we'll go this way." A note of worry entered her voice. "I'm terrible with all the names, but I'll try to introduce you to as many people as I can. I can teach you a trick to remember them if you'd like." "Can you?" Mel tried, but she's not good with names either. Neylan finished with her. Vander laughed, but the next moment her smile vanished. She whispered, "Can we start now?" A couple approached with an expectant look, both the lady and the gentleman wearing the brightest apple red Neylan had ever seen. She suppressed a smile and allowed Vander to take the lead. To their credit, the couple gave Vander's dragon fleet only a passing glance, as messengers were not an uncommon sight around a palace with a rookery. Neylan and Vander practiced memory tricks in between meeting a dozen more couples, who had thankfully spread out among all the garden lanes rather than bunching up to meet the visiting princesses en masse. Neylan much preferred this method of introductions to a ball or formal dinner. As a couple of grey-haired sisters with steely eyes took their leave, their whispers carried through the thick rhododendron, shielding them from sight. "2 dragon girls at once. Wouldn't have seen it in my day." Neylan's eyebrows rose as she exchanged a look with Vander. Apparently she hadn't escaped the nickname after all, though she wasn't the only dragon girl anymore. The thought brought forth an unexpected bubble of laughter, as well as a twinge of guilt, remembering the curse that had given Vander their shared nickname. "If Mel has her way," Neylan said, "there will be lots of dragon girls and dragon boys before long. All the kingdoms will be filled with messenger dragons." As if in acknowledgement of the reference, Fleet perked up and squawked. Whist woke at the noise and crawled on top of Neylan's head, where he spread his tiny wings to catch the sun. The couple who had been headed towards them averted their eyes and veered off onto another path. Messenger dragons were one thing, but poisonous aconites were an entirely different matter. "Let's rest for a moment before we head back." Neylan pulled Vander into a shaded alcove and sat on a bench underneath an enthusiastically draping willow. "I'm impressed with Fleet's behaviour. Most messengers find it difficult to sit for so long." "Mel's a good teacher, plus we fed them well before the party. Ah, yes, full bellies are key." She plucked Whist off her head and placed him on the back of the bench. "Has she taught you any whistles yet?" "Whistles?" Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. Neylan chuckled. "I thought not. She can't whistle, but I can teach you a few of the simpler commands." "Have you taught Whist?" Vander held her hand out, palm up, and Whist climbed aboard. Far from acting jealous, Fleet tiptoed down Vander's arm like a cat on a branch to have a closer look, his long tail extended for balance. "I've taught him some things, but I don't know how long he'll stay with me before he's ready to go off on his own again." He'd stayed longer than any other garden dragon she'd nursed back to health. She tried not to think of him as a pet, but some days he made it difficult. Vander bit her lip. "I still have so much to learn. Baz is wonderful, but his days are so full of meetings and such that we don't get as much time together as we'd like. Hopefully that will change after our wedding." "I'm here to help you any way I can." Hoping to coax another smile from her, Neylan scooped Fleet onto her knees. "Did you know messengers are ticklish?" "They are?" Vander leaned close, dark eyes wide. "Where?" She flipped Fleet onto his back and scratched his belly. His wings drooped on either side of her lap, draping against the skirt petals, and his tongue lolled out. Taking one of his feet, she splayed out his toes and gently stroked between 2 of them. Fleet let out a series of coughing chirps and rolled onto the ground. Vander giggled. Did he just laugh? A chuckle from the shadows told them they had an audience. Fleet faced the intruder, squawked in recognition, and flew up to his shoulder. A black-skinned man stepped out from behind a clump of willow branches. Keir. No one else would fit the description Mel had given her. Keir stroked Fleet's back, but his gaze was all for Neylan. Her heart raced. He was taller than she'd imagined, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that looked like they'd rather not be confined within his formal tunic. He looked at her the way Mel looked at her maps when trying to memorize every line and curve. Neylan stood and took a few steps towards him before realizing she'd moved. Up close, his skin proved to be as dark as it had first appeared from a distance, and every inch of him, from his bald head and smooth jaw to his neck and the backs of his hands, was covered with pale crescent-shaped scars like a dragon's scales. The way the light and shadows played over his skin revealed shades of obsidian and coal and ash, with icy undertones. She'd never seen anything like it. How much of it was natural, and how much came from being cursed into the form of a black dragon? She craned her neck to look into his dark eyes, with no memory of stepping closer. He cleared his throat and shuffled his feet. Vanda stepped into view, and Neylan tore her gaze away. "Princess Neylan of Ituria, may I present Master Healer Keir of Mazarian?" Whist flew over and landed on Neylan's braid, peeking at him over her ear. "And her aconite dragon, Whist," Vanda said. Neylan grinned at the additional introduction. Keir's eyes sparkled with amusement, and he bowed. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Your Highness." He held his finger out to Whist, who stretched his neck out for a scratch. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Master Keir." Neylan held out her arm for Fleet, whose toes were digging into Keir's shoulder, and then handed him over to Vanda. "We should join the others in the main clearing," Vanda said. "Will you walk with us?" "Of course." A dragonfly whizzed by, and Fleet took to the air after it. "Drat that dragon!" Vanda said, as she broke into a jog after him. "You two go on without me. I'll join you as soon as I can." Whist, excited by Fleet's quick departure, flapped in excitement and jumped from Neylan's hair, but his foot became entangled. He ended up dangling upside down at her neck. Not the least bothered, he let his wings and tail flop and gave a resigned chirp, trusting in Neylan to rescue him. She reached around to free him, but she couldn't see what she was doing and ended up making things worse. Finally, she squinted up at Keir and gestured to her dragon. "Would you be so kind as to untangle my dragon?" He hurried to her side. "Oh, of course, Your Highness." He paused. "Does he bite?" "No, he doesn't spit either." After treating Whist's wing, she knew firsthand the damage an aconite dragon could inflict with its acid-like venom. "And please call me Neylan. Surely we've grown past courtly titles after all these months of writing." "As you wish, Neylan." His hands moved gently as he worked to free Whist's feet. "I've never seen an aconite this close. I wouldn't have thought they would make good pets." "Whist isn't exactly a pet. I saved his life and he chose to stay with me. He's free to leave whenever he wants." After a moment he said, "There." Sitting on Keir's palm, Whist chirped twice and then flew off to chase ladybugs on a nearby yellow dock plant. Neylan smiled. He said, "Thank you." Keir stared at her so long her face heated. Was he as fascinated at finally seeing her as she was at seeing him? "You have a—" He reached towards her face, hesitated, and then tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. "Sorry, it came loose." Her fingers traced the path his had taken, and she cleared her throat. "Thank you." He held out his arm. "To the party?" "Oh, yes, we should go." Whist flew a couple of circles around them before landing on Neylan's head. His talons pricked her scalp like the teeth of a comb. After tiptoeing for a few moments, he sprawled out on his back with his wings flopping down around her ears and his tail trailing down the back of her neck. His snout rested near her hairline above her forehead. Keir watched until Whist stopped moving. "Is he all right?" "He's sunning himself." Keir grinned, and then a quick burst of laughter escaped before he schooled his expression to mostly serious again. "I'm not laughing at you. It's just—" He trailed off as if not sure what to say without causing offence. I know, it's not every day you see a princess with a dragon on her head.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?